What if the courage you've been searching for your entire life has been inside you all along, just waiting for you to take one single step? This is the story of a boy who learned that bravery isn't the absence of fear. It's what you do while fear walks beside you. And what he discovered will change how you see every challenge ahead. Lucas was 11 years old when fear became his shadow. It followed him everywhere. To school, where his voice would vanish the moment a teacher called his name. To the dinner table, where words stuck in his throat like stones. To his bedroom, where darkness pressed against the walls and whispered terrible possibilities. Most nights, he lay awake, heart pounding, convinced that something unspeakable waited in the corners. His mother had stopped checking on him 3 times a night. His father had run out of reassuring words. Even his younger sister had learned to navigate around his anxious silences. "Lucas, would you like to read your essay to the class?" Mrs. Henderson's voice echoed through the classroom one Thursday morning. His throat closed. Every pair of eyes turned toward him, 30 mirrors reflecting his inadequacy. The words on the page blurred, his chest tightened. The familiar electric panic surged through his limbs. I can't," he whispered. Laughter rippled through the room, not cruel but casual, which somehow felt worse. He was the boy who couldn't, the boy who wouldn't. The invisible boy made of glass and apologies. That afternoon, walking home through Riverside Park, Lucas made a decision. He would take the long way, through the old grove where the trees grew so thick that even at noon, shadows pooled like dark water. If he couldn't speak in front of people, at least he could prove he wasn't afraid of everything. But 3 steps into the grove, his feet stopped moving. The logical part of his brain knew it was just trees, just shadows, just the ordinary absence of light. But fear doesn't speak the language of logic. Fear speaks in heartbeats and shallow breaths, and the absolute certainty that something terrible will happen if you take one more step. He turned around, shame burning in his chest. That's when he saw the old woman. She sat on a bench Lucas had never noticed before, despite walking this path every day for 6 years. She was ancient, the kind of old that seems carved from time itself, with silver hair braided down her back and eyes that reflected the filtered sunlight like dark water. She was feeding the birds, not tossing bread carelessly, but holding seeds in her open palm, letting sparrows and finches land on her weathered fingers as if she were a tree herself. "The grove frightens you," she said without looking up. It wasn't a question. Lucas froze, caught between the urge to run and the strange pull of her voice, soft but steady, like an anchor in deep water. "I'm not scared," he lied automatically. Now she looked at him, and her eyes were kind but knowing. Fear is nothing to be ashamed of. Every creature knows fear. But tell me, do you know the difference between a brave person and a coward? Lucas shook his head. A coward runs from fear. A brave person. She paused, watching a cardinal settle onto her thumb. A brave person carries fear with them, but walks forward anyway. "I can't," Lucas said, the words escaping before he could stop them. "I can't speak in class. I can't walk through those trees. I can't do anything." The old woman smiled. "Can't? Or have you simply never learned how to walk with your fear instead of running from it?" She reached into the cloth bag beside her and pulled out a small, smooth stone, dark gray, shot through with veins of white quartz that caught the light. "I have a proposition," she said. "Tomorrow at dawn, meet me at the entrance to the grove. Bring nothing but this stone. I will teach you something about courage that no one else has thought to show you." Lucas stared at the stone in her outstretched palm. Every instinct screamed at him to refuse, to go home, to stay safe in his small, fear-circled world. But something else stirred beneath the fear, a tiny ember of desperate hope. "What will I have to do?" he asked. "Walk," she said simply. "Just walk." Lucas barely slept that night. He clutched the stone under his pillow, feeling its cool weight against his palm. Part of him hoped morning would never come. Part of him counted the minutes until dawn. At 5:47 a.m., he slipped out of his house, the stone heavy in his pocket. The park was transformed in the pre-dawn light. Mist rising from the grass, everything hushed and expectant. The old woman was already there, standing at the mouth of the grove like a guardian of some ancient threshold. "You came," she said, approval in her voice. "That alone required more courage than you know." Up close, the grove looked even darker, the path disappearing into shadow after just a few meters. "Here is what you will do," the old woman said. "You will walk through this grove to the other side. It is exactly 1 mile, but you must do it in complete silence. No speaking, no running, no turning back. And you must do it while holding this stone against your heart." She demonstrated, pressing her palm flat against her chest. "That's it?" Lucas asked, confused. It seemed almost too simple. "That's it," she confirmed. "But there is one more thing. As you walk, every fear that rises in your mind, you must acknowledge it. Say hello to it. Name it. But do not let it stop your feet." "What if I can't?" "Then you will discover something important about yourself. Either way, you win." Lucas took a deep breath. The stone felt heavier now, or maybe it was just his heart. He pressed it against his chest and took the first step into shadow. The first 100 meters were easy. The path was clear, and enough morning light filtered through that Lucas could see his feet. The stone against his chest was warm from his hand, a small comfort. Then the trees grew thicker. Shadows moved at the edge of his vision. Not real movement, just the tricks fear plays on perception. His breath came faster. The old, familiar panic began its rise, electrical and insistent. "Hello, fear of the dark," he thought, trying the old woman's instruction. "I see you." It felt awkward, almost silly. But something shifted. The fear was still there, but it was as if he'd put a small distance between himself and it, enough to keep walking. 50 more steps. 100. The path curved, and suddenly he couldn't see the entrance anymore. Couldn't see the exit. Just trees and shadows and the narrow dirt path beneath his feet. His heart hammered. The stone pressed against his ribs. "Hello? Fear of being lost?" he acknowledged. "Hello. Fear of being alone." Something rustled in the underbrush. Every muscle in his body screamed, "Run." His feet actually stopped moving. This was it. The moment he'd always known would come. The moment when fear won, when he proved he was exactly as weak and useless as he believed. But then he felt it, the stone, warm and solid against his heart. And he remembered the old woman's words, "A brave person carries fear with them, but walks forward anyway." He didn't need the fear to go away. He just needed to take the next step. So he did. After that, something changed. The walk became almost meditative. Each time fear rose, and it rose constantly, in waves, Lucas would name it, acknowledge it, and take another step. The stone against his heart became a rhythm, a reminder. Hello, fear of failure. Hello, fear of being watched. Hello, fear of the unknown. He started to notice other things. The way morning light slanted through gaps in the canopy. The smell of moss and earth. The sound of a creek he'd never known was there, burbling somewhere to his left. His breathing slowed. His steps steadied. At one point, he realized he'd been walking for what felt like forever. But he wasn't tired. His legs moved automatically, his mind quiet in a way he'd never experienced. It was as if he'd dropped through the bottom of fear into something else. A vast, still space where fear existed but didn't control him. The shadows that had seemed threatening now just looked like shadows. Trees. Natural darkness. Nothing more. And then, unexpectedly, he saw light ahead. Real light. Golden and warm. He'd made it through. Lucas stepped out of the grove into a small meadow he'd never known existed. The sun was just cresting the horizon, painting everything in shades of amber and rose. The old woman sat on a fallen log, that same peaceful smile on her face. "You walked," she said. Lucas nodded, suddenly unable to speak, not from fear this time, but from something bigger, more overwhelming. "How do you feel?" she asked. He looked down at the stone still pressed against his heart, then back at the grove behind him. It looked smaller now, just a stand of trees, just a path. "Different," he said finally. "I feel different." The old woman patted the log beside her, and Lucas sat. His legs trembled slightly, not from fear, but from exertion, from the sheer effort of doing something he'd thought impossible. "Tell me what you discovered," she said. Lucas turned the stone over in his hands, feeling its weight, its cool smoothness. "The fear didn't go away," he said slowly. I thought being brave meant not being afraid. But I was afraid the whole time." "And yet you walked?" "And yet I walked," he echoed, wonder creeping into his voice. The fear was there, but it was like it was walking beside me instead of blocking my path. The old woman nodded. This is the secret most people never learn. They wait for fear to disappear before they act. They think courage is the absence of fear. But courage is not the absence of anything. It is the presence of forward motion despite fear. She reached over and gently touched the stone in his hand. "This stone represents your heart. Did you notice how it grew warm as you walked?" Lucas nodded. "That warmth is your own aliveness, your own courage, heating the stone. It was always there, inside you. The stone didn't give you anything. It simply helped you feel what was already true." Lucas stared at the stone with new eyes. All this time, he'd been waiting for something external to make him brave. Some magic word, some perfect moment when fear would vanish, and courage would rush in to fill the space. But courage wasn't something that happened to him. It was something he did. A choice, a step, a walk through darkness with fear as a companion rather than a master. "But what about school?" he asked. "What about all the other things I'm afraid of?" The old woman stood, brushing dirt from her skirt. "You have already learned the method. Name the fear. Acknowledge it. Press your hand to your heart, your stone, and take the next step. One step. That's all courage ever is. One step forward with fear walking beside you." She looked at him with those deep, knowing eyes. "The grove will always be there, and there will always be groves in your life. Dark places you must pass through, but now you know. You can walk through darkness. You have already done it." Lucas walked home through the park as the world woke up around him. He held the stone in his pocket, his fingers wrapped around its familiar shape. Nothing had changed, and everything had changed. Monday morning, Mrs. Henderson asked for volunteers to present their essays. Lucas felt the familiar panic rise, the tightening throat, the electrical pulse of anxiety. But this time, he didn't run from it. He pressed his hand against his chest, feeling his heartbeat, solid and real. "Hello, fear of judgment," he thought. "I see you. You can walk with me." His hand rose. "I'll read mine," he said. His voice shook. His hands trembled. Fear walked beside him every step to the front of the room. But it didn't stop his feet. He read his essay, haltingly at first, then with growing steadiness. The words came. The world didn't end. Some students looked bored, some looked interested. None of it mattered as much as he'd thought it would. What mattered was that he'd taken the step. That night, Lucas placed the stone on his windowsill where he could see it from his bed. The darkness in his room looked different now. Not friendly exactly, but familiar. Known. Just another grove to walk through. He fell asleep easily for the first time in months. Over the following weeks, small things changed. Lucas raised his hand more often, spoke to classmates at lunch, walked new routes home, choosing the path not because it was easy, but because it was where he wanted to go. Fear still came. It always would. But now he understood its true nature. Fear was information, not a stop sign, a companion, not a commander, something to acknowledge and walk with, not something to obey. 6 months later, walking through Riverside Park, Lucas found himself at the Grove entrance. He smiled, pressed his hand to his heart, and walked through without hesitation. The old woman was gone. He never saw her again. But it didn't matter. She'd given him everything he needed. Not the absence of fear, but the understanding that courage was never about being unafraid. It was about taking the next step anyway. Years later, when Lucas was grown, he would carry a smooth stone in his pocket. Not the same stone, but one like it. Whenever he faced a difficult moment, he would press it against his heart and remember. Courage is not the absence of fear. It is one step forward with your fear walking beside you. And he would take that step. Always, he would take that step. This story reminds us that courage was never about being fearless. It was always about taking the next step with fear as your companion, not your commander. So here's my question. What one step have you been avoiding because you're waiting for the fear to disappear first? Drop the word courage in the comments if this story spoke to you. Share your city. Let me know where this message found you. Subscribe because every week I share stories that transform how you see your struggles. Remember, your next breakthrough might be just one step away.